How's it going, everybody? Another week of the year has gone on by, and with that comes another Sunday, which means it's Q&A day. As always, if you'd like to have your questions answered, two ways you can do it. Let me know in the comments down below, or come over and join us, twitch.tv/Lawler, where we stream every day but Tuesday and Sunday. We got people in chat right now hanging out, saying hi to YouTube. You can see it right now over there. And I will alternate between both the most liked questions on the YouTube section as well as those over in chat. We try to give you a little bit so you can split the queue, but primarily if you guys have questions and stuff, let me know in the comments down below or come over to the stream where we answer them on a regular basis. But with that said, let's jump into the YouTube section and see what we have in store. The first question, which we're gonna heart right away because then I know which ones I'm actually answering, comes from Pure Brewers. I thought it said Brewers at first, and I'm like, nope, that's just your Midwestern brain. It says, what do you think about a special guest analyst for every regional? Be awesome to see more ex-pros and content creators and myself join the desk in a similar fashion like Kronovi did. I think it'd be a cool idea. I think it's probably not the focus that the broadcast itself should have right now in RLCS. I think there's other things that the RLCS should be focused on in particular to make sure that they're putting on the best product. But I do think that focusing in on the personalities is important. I think bringing in content creators is probably not the play for the broadcast. You have to handpick people, very specific people. But I do think that special guest analyst, when done right, is a cool way to add flair very easily. It's very easy to just say, hey, we want you on broadcast. We put you in the broadcast. Good to go. But for all the content creators and all that kind of stuff that are brought on, you got to make sure that it's done in an appropriate way so that it gets presented well and it comes across well. And that's where that fine selection process comes into play. It's also a lot for the broadcast talent to have to kind of do the heavy lifting for people that don't have on-camera experience. So personally, I think the overall thing is, rather than bringing in a guest analyst, is I think the major thing they should be focusing on is how do we make sure that the interviews with current pros are more fleshed out? How do we find a way to make the current people that are there, like when we interview people like Chicago and stuff, how do we make these more special? How do we make these more unique, other than, hey, post-match is done, we bring in this person? How do we shine more light into those specific things, and how do we do them more frequently? I think there's a lot of really cool ways they could do that, and I'm excited to see how they continue to do those things. But I think additional content pieces, everything else, you see the contrast between RLCS when it's live at a major and how awesome it is with the content stuff they do, and then you look at it when it's online and just it feels so lackluster in comparison, which obviously it's easier to do stuff when things are in person. So I think finding a way to mesh those two in some capacity, I think it should be the number one, which is easier said than done, obviously. Not a question from Christopher Johnson, but says, I don't want to take away from NA and EU teams for the majors in the way you suggest. I would have a wild card before every major personally, so we could have more of everyone. So by adding more people, that means we also have more days, and it's also more matches that we have to find a way to handle. So that can, I think, create complication. Right now, I don't think it's the right answer. Future tense, I'd be down. 20 teams instead. You have 4 teams come from a wild card bid, which then sheds more light. You put them as the last seed. It allows some of these other regions to play against other international competition. Like you have SSA playing against MENA and stuff like that. And it does create a hierarchy, which is really, really cool. As of right now, I don't think it's possible. And the only way is the allocation, I think, of, hey, these teams are better, therefore you have to give these regions more spots rather than just by default giving more and more to North America and EU. But I do think top 5 right now in NA and EU is very solid. So it is tough to take those away. So I do concede on that. And I do like wildcard. I think wildcard bids, if they get the upset and they come through as the lowest seed and have this David versus Goliath type of run is awesome. It's so good for viewership, but at the same time, you don't want to have a wildcard bid just immediately go out every single time as well. So I think it'd be really cool. I do think it'd be really cool in the future for wildcards. I 100% agree. Next here, recently in a video of yours and pretty continuously on stream, you feel very strongly that Rocket League as an esport can be big, if not bigger than League of Legends. So my question is, what does Psyonix Epic need to do in order to put RL on the top tier? So that video itself could be a standalone topic, but we'll try to give the keys to the castle to me and tell you what happens. I think League of Legends right now, the biggest thing that they do is they're not afraid to spend money. They probably spend more money than any other esport, and rightfully so. Riot Games is pulling in and raking in cash. They got 10-cent capital. Like, they're doing just fine. They've got a franchise league. People are paying millions of dollars for spots. Like, the money is there, therefore they're able to spend money. And I think that's the number one thing. Psyonix needs to be willing to take risks, and I think they're starting to do that. The best example I can give is what they're enabling their broadcast talent to do. All the content pieces that like Subpart and HD have been putting out, the T-Bates like translate stuff, those content pieces are a way to separate yourself and get people more invested. A lot of it, I think, does have to be surrounded around content, building up the names and the recognizable figures in your scene so it brings in a wider audience. I think that's number one. Number two, they finally started putting out merch. You need to make the game as recognizable as possible, and a lot of that has to do with sales. You have to find a way to make sure that outside of the game, when you are not live on broadcast, how are people recognizing and becoming part of your branding? And now that in partnership with Benta, one of their production partners, has made content and merch, it allows people like myself, if I buy a shirt and I go travel and people see that shirt, someone may recognize that and be like, oh, it's a thing. But I think there's similar regards to how you grow an esport nowadays, like you do a esports organization. Organizations like 100 Thieves built a name based upon really good branding with merch and new series and collections, as well as finding really good personalities to make content and surround, and then build and prop those people up. There is a reason why 100 Thieves is as big as they are, despite it taking them roughly 2.5, 3 years until they started winning things in their respective titles. But a lot of that comes down to, at a core base, spend money and being able to take risks. You need to find a way to enable the people within your space. And this applies to Psyonix in general. Psyonix needs to enable their esports team and allow them to go out and do really cool projects that live and breathe outside of just our small little niche ecosystem that is Rocket League Esports. It's the biggest issue with my YouTube channel. While I am fulfilling a niche, that niche is very small in the grand scheme of things. I think that's the number one thing, and I think they're actually doing that. I think if they keep continuing on the path that they are, there's a lot of people in position and power that are way smarter and way more experienced than I am to make these types of decisions. And it's exciting to see the steps that they're taking to get to those places. But persisting through COVID now, doing live events, making sure that when they do live events, it's not just the gameplay, it's also the content pieces. Like, there's a lot of things that they're doing that I think are really, really cool. But the number one thing that I personally resonate with is seeing them prop up their talent. The personalities being able to show, and they're allowed to speak on controversial topics. Like, First Touch is probably one of the best things that they've enabled, because in the past, when I was part of the RLCS, Epic Games acquired Psyonix, and we could not talk about it. Even though I wanted to say how positive it was, even though the entire community, for lack of a better word, was all over the acquisition because they thought they're going to do what they were doing with Fortnite, I personally, as broadcast talent, even though I didn't work for Psyonix, as a public figure that was associated to it, they would not allow me to speak on the topic. And it seems like those restrictions and those lack of personalities, it felt like, are starting to get to that point, which I think is amazing. I think it's so awesome to see the loud, boisterous, like the best part of the most recent major was the outdoor studio. People as public figures able to talk and speak their mind unapologetically on broadcast. Like, you look at the best and top moments of the last major, most of them are from the analyst desk. It's absolutely fantastic. So they just need to keep doing what they're doing, if I'm being honest. And someone way smarter than me needs to think of some other crazy stuff to keep it going. But a lot of it, take risks. Do not be afraid to take risks. And if they do not succeed, don't immediately go back into your shell. Double down on it, but just do it right. It makes a big difference. It really does. Bamboo, you mentioned how you aren't part of the RLC's broadcast a fair bit, but I feel you've never really explained why. You say you're on good terms with the staff and talk regularly, so did someone higher up follow you? Did you quit? If so, why? Or is this something you aren't comfortable talking about or even allowed to talk about? I bring it up a lot because there's a lot of people that ask me. It's probably the question I get the most. Why aren't you casting for the RLCS? I get it a ton, which is something that I have to continue to readdress because there is a lot of new views and new eyes that come in that aren't aware. If you've ever come to my stream is basically me curating the same question over and over again because a lot of people don't see that original answer, even if you talk about it a lot. So for your sake, I will answer it, Bamboo. I used to be part of the RLCS from seasons 1 to 8. I did not receive a contract extension going into season 9, aka they fired me. They did not extend my contract. They did not rehire me. The reasons as to why I have not stated, I think that stays between myself and Psyonix. I don't think the public needs to know as to why. Maybe in the future when I'm all said and done with Rocket League, maybe. But I just don't think it's one of those where I don't think the community needs to know. You know, I don't think anybody other than like my personal close friends and stuff, or people that I talk to on a regular basis, I don't think people really need to know that information. I don't think it, while it would be nice, I think, to know it, you know, to help answer that curiosity that you have. It's just not something that I think people need to know publicly. It's not necessarily anybody's business, and the answer actually may surprise you, but that probably just makes you more curious. So I probably shouldn't have said that too. But yeah, only a select few people know. Only some very people, I guess people that I'm very close to know. So yeah, it's just not something that I've talked about publicly because I don't think the public needs to know. Lawler, have you read up or heard about Gravity Ball, a game rumored to be in the works by 2K to compete with Rocket League? So I have not read about it specifically, Seek Up, but I have heard that 2K is in the works of making a competitor to Rocket League, which I am all for. I've said this a couple times that Psyonix has gotten away with murder a few times. They have shot themselves in the foot on a lot of different things, and the game, obviously very successful, such a great idea, everything that it is. Like, Rocket League as a game is done very well. It really encompasses what makes playing a sport exciting. The effort, the time that goes into practicing and owning a craft, you know, mechanics of dribbling a ball, passing, shooting, all that kind of stuff, is hours upon hours spent on the field learning that skill. And Rocket League does a really good job of translating that into video game, while sports simulation games like Madden, FIFA, etc. is I click button, I pass ball. I click button, I shoot ball. And while there are skills within the simulation, it doesn't fully explain or give you the same feeling of like the beautiful game, the whole poetry in motion type of thing when you see a perfect give and go in Rocket League. And that's why I think Rocket League's been successful, despite some of the decisions being made by Psyonix where like, what the heck are you guys doing? When there's no competition, it doesn't always go well. Now with 2K coming in, I think it's a really tall task. It's really tough to do what Rocket League has accomplished. But I welcome it because that competition only benefits the community. It only benefits the consumer. Because if there is another company coming in that does a pretty good job of it, and it forces Psyonix to also be like, oh shoot, we gotta like make sure that we stay ahead, that push and drive from both sides only makes it better for us. So I am all for it. I wish them luck. I don't think it's easily accomplished. I think what Psyonix is doing is actually really impressive, and it's really, really difficult to do. But I for one am all for it. I think it's cool. It's been 7 years. We've got a video talking about how Rocket League Esports has been around for 6 years coming up here soon. But yeah, Rocket League itself has been around for about 7 years, and it's actually insane what they've accomplished. I don't think it's talked about enough. It's pretty crazy for a game to be around for 7 years, let alone in a genre that no one else has ever been able to do ever. So should be fun. Should be fun to see what 2K ends up coming with. We'll keep an eye on it for sure. Javi asks, out of curiosity, how long do you think it will take NA and EU to stop being considered RL's top regions, and is there a benchmark for that in your head? Man, that's actually really tough. So NA EU obviously have been doing it for a little bit longer, and the difficulty is that in order for people to overtake them, I think we're just now getting to the point where it's plausible. Obviously, with like the size and the amount of players and the accessibility that is in North American EU, really helps. But for the first time for RLCS 21-22 in comparison, is that now for the first time in 5 years, now 6, these minor regions have a dedicated tournament to play in. They have dedicated tournaments consistently with the same format, but still less prize pools. Like the prize pools aren't as much, and it's difficult because I don't know if it is ever justifiable to allocate more funds, time, effort into these minor regions when the player base isn't there. And that may change. You never know. You could see, you know, Falcons, previous Sandrock Gaming, inspire an entire generation, and all of a sudden the MENA player base just skyrockets because of what they've been inspired by. I mean, you look at, you know, countries like Denmark and stuff, and what Counter-Strike means to those areas and what that does for the kids in that area. And then it shapes school and everything else. Like, I think esports in general are such a really unique place because it has only been around for like 3 decades, and we're still seeing the base level, what goes into creating an infrastructure and everything else and propping up those situations. I think it's very interesting to think about what it's going to take for regions that are not NAEU to get to that point. And if it is just a matter of playing upset and being successful and beating certain teams, and, you know, seeing the Falcons doing continuous top 6, you know, you see Sandrock getting top 8 in fall. We didn't get to see them, but with all the issues going on, right, between COVID restrictions and not being able to have visa stuff approved and everything else, I still think we're pretty far out. But I do think in time there is chance, if you see certain regions outperforming over and over and over again, you stop with the minor region mentality and say, yes, they are a serious contender. But that takes not only time, but also consistency. And when will that happen? I wish I knew. If I did, I would be giga brain and able to predict things way ahead of time, which would be crazy to see the stonks of that increase in the future. But that is so tough to do. It really is. Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough question, but I welcome it whenever it may be. That is going to do it for today's Q&A video, though. Some really good questions, some all over the place, but a lot of focus on the growth and the development of the esport, which is always really cool. Because I think we're all curious about it. I'm curious on where it's going to go. I'm still curious on what Unreal Engine 5 is going to do, if anything. Those are the things that we just have to be patient about, which is always tough. So that is going to do it for today's Q&A video. I appreciate you all taking the time to sit and watch and ask the questions. But if you would like to be a part of these in the future, 2 things you can do. You can always leave a comment down below. If you see one you like, give it a like. And come over to the stream, twitch.tv/Lawler. Come hang out with us. Come ask your questions, and we'll do our best to answer what we can. But that is going to do it for today's video. As always, like, comment, subscribe. You guys know what to do. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.